Hello, everybody. Week 7, Thursday. Hope you guys are doing good. Just to recap some of the things we worked on yesterday, we added a click button to our user interface, our main menu, I should say. And we also did some work with we learned how to find and replace assets. So if you remember, we swapped out that initial asset that we had in our main menu with a new one, and we used the replace references option. And I'm going to not actually go through with deleting, but what you see here is if you do have things that are referenced in other parts of the game, that you'll want to go down here and make sure that you replace it with something because it will break your project if you don't. Now, if you have something that you aren't using, so let me try to find something I'm not using here. Soccer goal materials. Well, I am using all that. But if you had something that you weren't using, then you wouldn't get that um, assets are in memory. So that was one thing we learned. And we also learned how to do a celebration in our level. And just to recap that, we'll go back to our gold blueprint, which by the way is getting pretty big here. So we're going to do some other things to I'm going to delete this because we're going to look at that in a bit. But we have a bunch of code here and it's getting a little difficult. Not too difficult now, but it will be at some point where we'll want to simplify the layout of that. Well, welcome, Eden. And we're going to look at that tonight as well, or this afternoon. But over here, where was the spawn system? Remember, that's what the visual effects system in Unreal Engine is called the Niagara system. And we use the word system to talk about what the visual effect is. It's a visual effects system. And if you recall, when you click anywhere that has an asset that's been defined, if you click on this magnifying glass to the browse, you don't see any, okay, here it is. That'll take you right to that asset. So this is our confetti system. And if you remember, we increased the size of the pieces of confetti, and we also made sure that it only plays once during our goal celebration. All right, so that's a recap of yesterday. We've got some more polish that we are going to do today, and we are going to stop 5 minutes before the 30-minute mark so we can discuss next week. But here we go with additional polish for our game. The first thing I wanted to show you guys for this session, we'll go ahead and save up everything, is maps and modes in the uh, project settings. So I'm going to go to the edit menu and I'm going to select project settings. And it's going to be one of the first things we're going to see over here. Obviously the very first one is the description of the game. You could call it whatever you wanted. If you had a company name, homepage, all that good stuff. But I want to go over here to maps and modes. So there are two maps um, that we can set here. The editor start map and maps and levels. Remember, we use those interchangeably. The startup map is what happens when we load Unreal Engine and load our project. What map are we going to see? And because we only have um, this one level, our soccer level, it's not a big deal. But think about if you had a game where maybe you had 20 levels, and if you didn't say which one you wanted to open at startup, you would always open probably level one. And then you would have to go and open level 20. So this is a good thing if you know that you're going to be spending a couple weeks or months in a new level, you can set it to automatically pop this up when you uh, open the editor. Now, the second is going to be the game default map. And believe it or not, this is not our default map. Remember, we created a map just to hold the main menu. So I'm going to go over here and type main menu. And that's the map that I want to see when I play the game. And project settings are always automatically auto-saved. So as you'll see here, there's no save button. It's just automatically done here. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to point out. And let's also take a look at that main menu. And when we pressed play, we had the click sound here, and we had the new font. And just as a reminder, we used a really cool effect called blur, which blurred our background a little bit. Okay, and I'll just click there to close. All right, so what we're going to work on now is a camera fade. So if you recall, at the end of, get back to our main level. Yesterday, we created it, or we built some functionality to where when the player scores a goal, they will eventually respawn right back over here. And while that's a really cool functionality for the game, so we don't want the player just constantly staying by the goal after they've already scored, it's kind of abrupt how it just instantly teleports you here. And since this week is all about polish, let's figure out how we can make that a little less abrupt. So I'm going to look here. I'm going to go through the logic. Okay, so here's where we're getting the soccer ball. This is where we're changing the score. Then we play the cheer and the whistle. And then we spawn this visual, the confetti. So I'm thinking right about here, we might want to do a camera fade. So that's going to go in between this short delay where after we score and we play the visual effects, then we go over here where all of our respawn stuff is. Okay. All this is over here. That's looking good. So I'm going to just disconnect this right here. And again, to do that, you just hold down the control button on your keyboard. And then once you see it light up like that, you just click on it and that'll remove that wire. Okay, so from here, we want to get a function called start camera fade. And you'll see that there's nothing here. And this happens quite frequently in Unreal Engine. What it does is it looks at the node that you're trying to connect off of, or the last execution pin, which we call it, and see if it can be smart in the way that it filters the available options. But sometimes it doesn't show things that we know can connect here. So that's why we turn off context sensitive. And when we do that, we see we do indeed have a start camera fade. So again, this is like, maybe think of it like a Google search, and you type in ABC, and it shows you about ABC News or the ABCs, and maybe on page 4 of the search results is actually the company ABC Corp that you were trying to find. So it's trying to filter out that, but sometimes you want to turn that off. I hope that made sense. So I'm going to click on here, and we've got a couple options. Zoom in, and again, control and mouse wheel to zoom. And alpha, from alpha and to alpha. And if you've ever done any video work or any work with photography or any kind of stuff where you're dealing with opacity and transparency, alpha is essentially your transparency level. So alpha being at 1 is 100%. So that means there's no transparency. It's completely solid, right? It's completely opaque. And alpha 0 means it's completely invisible. So halfway between that would be 0.5, and that would mean it's semi-transparent. So again, let me just recap that. Alpha is how full of color an object is. And if it's at 1, it's completely solid. And if it's at 0, it's completely invisible. And if it's at some version in between, it's got some transparency to it. So if you had alpha to be 0.1, it would be very barely visible, but still slightly. Okay, so I'm going to hook that up here. And I'm just going to say we want to go from the screen is completely visible to completely not visible. And the duration is how long is this fade going to take place? So I'm going to say, we'll just do maybe 2 seconds. And then the color, you could use any kind of color you wanted for the fade out. I'm just going to leave it to be black. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to get our player character's camera system. And the way we do that is to right click and go to Get Player Camera Manager. And it's this one right here. And that's going to be our target. So we're saying we want a camera fade, and Unreal Engine is saying, okay, which camera? There might be several cameras in the game. And we want to say, we want to fade the player's camera, our camera, the ones who are playing the game. So I'm going to disconnect this just for now, just so we can test this. So let's compile and save that. Go back to our level. And I'm going to move goalie guy over here. And I'm just going to test from here. Okay. So that's a start. It's not great, but it's a start. So let's go back to our camera fade. And let's hook this back up. Okay. So what's going to happen here is we're going to fade the camera, and then it's going to over 2 seconds, and I'm actually going to change this to 1. Okay. And then this is going to be the delay after the camera fade is finished. Then this is going to be when we spawn our player back at the center field location. Okay. So let's try that again. Compile and save. Press play. Run over here, kick the ball in. Okay. All right. So the next thing we want to take a look at is, let me make sure that that our player respawned. Okay, good. Yep. All right, so that's not perfect. And in fact, what a programmer would do on a team is to say, okay, it kind of sort of works. It might not look the best, but here, tester or game designer, I'm going to give you some tools to test it. And that's going to be the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to promote some of these things to variables. And by doing so, that lets us go, or that would let a, let me move that back over here. That would let someone who's not a coder go and kind of play around with some of the values right here inside the editor, inside the level. And we've done this a little bit before, but I'm going to show you again. So over here is our goal, and this is probably the blueprint that currently has most of our logic in it. Okay, that's Trinity. There we go. Hello, Trinity. So the goal has most of our logic here. And I'm going to say, what would be good candidates for promote to variable? And I'm looking here, and I could say, okay, duration in our camera fade, right? How long does it take? Like if I set this to 5 seconds, for instance, and I'll compile and save and go score goal, play from here. So it's hard to see, but it was still fading over a 5-second period. So I'll say, okay, I want my teammates to be able to tweak that. So what I'll do is I will promote this to a variable, duration, and right here I'm going to say fade time for the camera. And we also have to make sure that it's here, public. So we click the eyeball. And then if we compile and save and go back to our goal, we should be able to see right here, duration. Okay, so that lets our testers kind of do this right here within the map without having to go dive into our code and figure out, okay, well, where is that value? All right. So let's take a look at another. Here's another one. Okay. Delay. This is how long before or how long after the camera fade is complete are we going to respawn our player at midfield? So that might be another one where I will just right click, promote to variable. It doesn't have to be called, sorry, did I do that? Yeah, I did do that right. So I don't want duration and duration underscore 0. So I can just very easy say respawn delay and how long it takes to respawn the player. And I'll compile and save that. Again, make sure this is public, because if it's not public, it won't show up on that sidebar there. Okay. And you can see our tooltips here. I'm not sure why the duration one didn't show up. So you can set the delay and it shows the tooltip. All right. Good point to save up. I think that's good enough for our variables here, which we allow our users and our testers to tweak. Okay, so let's big picture take a look at this thing. This big whole long blueprint. Wow, it's so, and I've done a pretty good job of kind of, keeping things tight, right? So you don't have a lot of blank space. But still, even that, we have a lot of code in here. So let's focus the next couple minutes on some code cleanup and some best practices for when you have these big, long blueprints, which if you start or if you continue your journey in Unreal Engine, you will have a lot of big blueprints. So the first thing to do is get rid of anything we don't need. So I'm just going to delete these begin plays and event ticks. They're not hooked up to anything. Okay. And I'll make sure, as we've talked about, that I've got some nice colors around my different things that do different things in the blueprint. Okay, here's their sound when our sound's playing. Make that a little, move this up here. You have to make sure for these comment boxes that your nodes are completely in the box or they won't all move together. Okay. And over here is the spawn system at location for a visual effect. So what I'm going to show here, and then here's the camera fade. What we're going to do here is another really cool feature where we can collapse and expand nodes. So I'm going to bring this down here so we can focus on this a little easier. Okay. All right, so this is where we're spawning our effect. Remember, we did the confetti last time. And then after it does that, it goes into the camera fade, which we just made, and then the camera fade goes to the respawn. So I could say, you know what, I'm pretty happy with this. I don't think that I'm going to need to change this, and I don't need to see all of this. So I can just select these 3 nodes and right click and collapse nodes. And that's going to put all of that logic that we did into just a little box here. And I'll call this, I'll right click, okay, and we'll say play VFX, which is play the visual effects. Okay, and again, we can do spawns Niagara system here in the description. Oh, spawn Niagara system. And you can also give it a fun color if you want, but you don't have to. Okay. All right. So we have that here. And it also gives us a preview if you look real closely of what that code looks like. And now I'm going to come back. We're going to do the same thing for our camera fade. Okay, because we got all this stuff here. I've already got the variable set up, so we don't need to really see all this. We can do it again over here in this duration. So I'm also going to select, and if you can't select all, which I actually can select all, you can hold down the control button and click on all 3 of the nodes and then do collapse nodes. And I'll call this camera fade. Now, what if I actually said, oh, you know what? That camera fade, we could actually choose the color of what color the screen goes to when we're fading. Right now it's black. How do I get back in there? Well, that's really easy. All you have to do is just double click back in here and it gives you this code snippet. And we could just very easily go right here and promote that to a variable again. And we'll call this fade color. And compile and save. And then our breadcrumbs up here to just get back to our main blueprint. We'll just click here. Okay. And we could even do it with this right here. We'll do one more. So we'll highlight all of that. We'll collapse this to a node. And let's call this respawn system. Here we go. Can move this over here. And just like that, look at our blueprint now. It's a lot neater, it's easier. And when you're working on a team, you would likely have somebody that you would say, okay, Greg, okay, Kim, I want you to work on the respawn system. So instead of having to go through all the code that we had right at first, that person could just go right over here and say, okay, I'm going to double click, and this is what I'm working on here. I'm going to work on this. And I don't have to worry about all the stuff that happens before and after that. All I need to do is test this out. So that is a great way for organization, and especially, as I said before, if you're working for teams, um, to be able to share your code and have people work on specific things in the game. Okay, so we are at the 328/628 mark, and that is going to do it for our polish session. I hope you guys will play around with some of the things we talked about today, like collapsing nodes, uh, promoting things to variables so that we can then go in our game level and just tweak things here, try them out. And now let's talk about next week. So, Rob Martin with Mindera, I believe, is going to be in Los Angeles at the Expo Center during one of the robotics classes next week. And just as a heads up. And then Rob is also going to be joining us Thursday, where we are going to have a show and tell session. So everyone will get a chance to demo their game for as long as you want, within reason. 3 to 5 minutes should be enough. And we will also be practicing our show and tell session on Wednesday next week. So we'll walk through having making sure you're comfortable with Zoom and doing screen sharing and sharing your audio to share your project. So with that said, that means that you will need to have your project ready to show, and you should at this point, by next Wednesday. Now, what I'll be doing tomorrow is I will be taking this project here that I've been showing to you guys as we've been building this, and I'm going to again zip this up so that you can use it as a reference, or you can take what I have and make some changes if you want to make it yours. But please do be prepared to show off your projects on Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And if you want to message me privately, where if you'd like to do a pre-recorded screen share or just do a slideshow, that's absolutely fine. So if you want to do a PowerPoint with screen grabs from your game, that's cool too. And Monday and Tuesday, finally, I know I did last week in reverse. Monday and Tuesday are going to be Q&A sessions. So I am just going to open it up for any questions you guys have about anything that we've covered. Maybe it's things we haven't covered that you're interested in. Maybe it's things like, well, how does Unreal Engine compare to Unity or GameMaker or Roblox? If I wanted to start developing games in Roblox, what are some of the things that we've learned in this course that would be helpful? So we're gonna kind of play it by ear. There's not going to be any lecture, so to speak, but we're just going to have a Q&A and a chat session. So please do be prepared to bring your questions on Monday and Tuesday. And other than that, that is a wrap. Let me stop the recording. Okay, I always get tripped up here at the end. There it is. Recording. Stop recording.